We're back once again, and I know Team India fans will be super happy with the result and the thrashing that Australia gave Kiwis. We've got Jeet Bhai and Neha as usual. यार मतलब कल जो हमने predict किया था in terms of what we can expect from the game, almost similar in terms of the result, in terms of the extent of the defeat, the margin and whatnot. Before we of course sort of open the series, let's just have the match summary out. सीधा खत्म कर देते हैं. Australia winning the toss. Unfortunately, that was the one thing that New Zealand would have hoped for, and that did not go in their favor. Won the toss, opted to bat first, and there was a solid start from Alyssa Healy and Beth Mooney. The Alyssa in particular was very, very, very dismissive of every delivery that was bowled outside the off stump. She was more than happy to clear the inner circle on the offside and get those boundaries. 26 of 20 is what she scored, helping Australia go past the 40-run mark in the power play itself. And once she got out, there was a slight slowdown thanks to Amelia Kerr and the way she bowled and all of that. But that wasn't enough. Elise Perry, Beth Mooney, and later on, of course, there were small cameos from some of the other batters as well, lower down the order. I'm just losing count of how many batters they have और किस किसने थोड़ा करके contribute किया. But of course, that helped Australia go to 148, the highest total rather in Sharjah this tournament. Amelia Kerr was the pick of the bowlers, 4 for 26, including the key wickets of Elise Perry, and she also managed to dismiss Grace Harris for the first bowler, so that was good on her. New Zealand, in reply, never really got going. It was first Megan shoot with the new ball, then it was the spinners. कहीं से भी थोड़ा सा भी उनको मिला ही नहीं, and अगर कुछ मिले ना तो फिर वो भी क्या ही कर सकते हैं. A result that we thought कि was India के against भी ऐसा ही कुछ होएगा, unfortunately था नहीं. And yeah, I cannot stress enough on how disappointed India must feel कि इस कीवी साइड के सामने हम लोग ऐसे बुरी तरीके से हार के आए. So yeah, it's just it's unfortunate, but all in all, a game that New Zealand would also want to forget because that means their NRR has also taken a beating. Australia has helped us. Now, can Team India help themselves? That's the question that we all will be looking answers for. और कल हमें answers भी मिल जाएंगे. Don't worry, of course. Neha, let's start with you again. In terms of the result, what did you make of it? The margin, especially.
Yeah, I mean, at one stage, the match is looking so evenly poised, especially the part where, the White Ferns actually got some of those wickets there and, didn't ensure that Australia would cross that 150, 160 barrier. So I think that's probably the only silver lining was of the way Amelia Kerr was bowling. I think through the course of our discussion, we will talk about her spell. But then somewhere, I think in the run chase, New Zealand never really looked the part, right? I mean, I think even Sophie Devine, in that post-match presentation was just talking about how they just didn't realize where that the required run rate was just climbing up so much. And she was also mentioning how most of the teams were not even getting six. So, getting any runs was just going to be very difficult against a very dominant Australian side. So somewhere they just looked very confused. And there was no intent at all to, kind of chase down that total. They lost wickets in clumps as well. So I think it was a very dismal performance, something that will definitely hurt India because they'd be like, we lost to this, New Zealand team. But New Zealand looked like a very different team than the team that actually played versus India. I think they will definitely, go back to the drawing board, reassess what clearly did not work out well for them. But somewhere I think they can still take a silver lining that they were able to restrict Australia to 148. Didn't help their cause because they eventually lost by 60 runs. But kind of disappointed, was hoping for a more evenly contested match. But yeah, that was not the case.
Was definitely not the case. And Jeet, again, how much do you think also was down to the fact that, Dubai was a lot more pacer friendly as opposed to Sharjah, which has been very low, slow, sluggish?
That was exactly my thought because even I think that Dubai is more suited to the kind of bowling attack that New Zealand have got, in particular the spin attack. It will be a lot more suited. So over here, it's not really going to pan out because the games that have taken place have suggested what kind of spinners are working out for all the teams over here, and New Zealand just don't seem to have those kind of spinners. So that was very, very apparent tonight as well, barring of course Amelia Kerr. Fran Jonas and Eden Carson had some horrible numbers. They were that unlucky because there were catches being put down of their bowling as well. But besides that, I still think they were not operating in that right pace range, and it was not really proven to be effective against the Australian batters. And it's true, of course. I mean, Australia had a collapse. They had a collapse of 29 for 6, but that collapse took place when they were 109 for 2. So they had enough runs on the board after which that collapse took place. But for New Zealand, they had a collapse of 34 for 9. But their collapse started when only 54 runs were on the board. So there was a huge gap. So Australia had enough cushioning to nullify the kind of collapse they had. They had enough runs on the board before which that collapse took place. So they were always going to be safe once they crossed that, say, 125, 130 barrier. And from there on, it was always going to be challenging for New Zealand to chase down any sort of a total that went beyond 125 because they just don't seem to have those aggressive batters. Sophie Devine is one of the names that you could look at, and in the preview, it's as we discussed, right? Izzy Gaze, Leah Tawu, Jess Kerr, those are names that you have to rely upon down the order. So there is too much to ask. If it comes down to them, then it means your top six are not firing, and that was exactly the case. So top four, if you look at the strike rates for Australia, all the top four batters had strike rate of 100 or more. But for New Zealand, the strike rate for the top four was 74, 57, 94, and 47. So that showed the huge disparity in the top four of both the batting units.
Yeah, for sure. And again, just to add to that as well, in terms of New Zealand's batting, not just their strike rates, we'd also spoken about their struggles against spin, the slower bowlers. And in this case, it wasn't just the slow bowlers, it was also the pacers with their variations that, managed to apply the chokehold. Be it Megan Shoot with his leg cutters. Everyone had decided that, boss, yahan pe zyada kuch chal nahi raha. Even Talia Migran, the one over she bowled towards the end, was more than happy to bowl those off cutters. So that way, of course, Australia, like always, clockwork precision. They know their plans. They are very thorough. They're very professional. So it never seemed like they were giving the game away. But Neha, again, there was that tiny phase that Jeet mentioned, 29 for 6 is what Australia lost in that phase. And also runs became hard to come by because of the way Amelia Kerr was bowling there. But again, that solid start that Alyssa Healy in particular gave, kept them in very good stead.
Absolutely, because I think there was a point, where Alyssa Healy could have been dismissed early on, but eventually, they took the review, so that didn't happen. But I think the way Alyssa Healy kind of built on her innings was very important for Australia. I mean, she's such an important cock. I think even when the match is going on, they were showing her knock versus India in that 2020 World Cup, and how, that one knock actually just literally took the match away from India. So she has that sort of a capability. Today, perhaps, getting that knock of 26 was also, always going to be enough, because Australia has that sort of batting depth. So you'd have batters come in and do their job. Even Beth Mooney, for that matter, carrying on her vein of form from that first match onto this one. I think she batted beautifully. Even Eris Perry took her time to kind of get going, but once she got in the groove, we saw those boundaries eventually coming. I think the only concerning trend which even Alyssa Healy did address was losing wickets in clumps, which was not very ideal, and how their middle order and lower middle order hasn't been tested so much, because you are such a dominant Australian side. You always have your openers and your number 3, number 4 doing the job for you, that the rest of the order kind of goes untested. So probably that's the one area they would want to look into, because teams are going to be targeting that, right, going ahead. But either case, I think they would be still pleased with the way their openers, kind of gave them a fine start. I think they had like a 40-run partnership to start off with, and the power play was much better. So I think, yeah, that would definitely be a positive.
Yeah, I mean, from what I remember, 5.1 overs is when they reached 41. And from there, it took them a while to reach the 70-run mark. It took them 10 overs or so, like nearly 4 overs for the next 20, 25 runs. And they lost a flurry of wickets as well. But again, Jeet, in terms of how Alyssa Healy operated in the power play, we'd spoken off air of how, for me personally, when I think of Alyssa Healy, it's those inside-out shots, be it your drives, be it whatever. She loves to access those areas, especially in the power play, because more often than not, the field is going to be inside the circle. Was the case once again. We saw her attempt a reverse sweep. Thankfully, better sense prevailed. She realized कि ये सब करने की जरूरत नहीं है. चुपचाप मैं आगे स्क्वायर के सामने मार सकती हूँ. But do you think New Zealand probably missed the trick or two there in terms of, what eventually got her out was Rosemary Mayer, bluffing her with the slow one. Do you think they missed the trick in terms of how they planned against her in the power play?
I think they missed a trick in terms of both batters. It's, as I mentioned, they just didn't have the right resources at their disposal, and that is in particular the spin attack. I personally wanted to see Leah Tawu, share the new ball alongside Rosemary Mayer, because Leah Tawu has a good record against Alyssa Healy, and I've also seen her trouble left-handed batters in particular, and that includes, of course, Beth Mooney as well. So I thought Leah Tawu could be a very, very good option to go to very early on alongside Rosemary Mayer, and then unleash your spinners. Look, if it was Lee Kasparek in the side, it would have been a different case altogether. What your two spinners were very quick spinners. So it was perhaps not your best bet against these two batters, and they were phenomenal at making use of that, because in Fran Jones's first over, I think 12 or 13 runs came off it. So they capitalized upon them, and she was clearly struggling with that right hand left hand combination being out there in the middle. She was not getting her lines right, so she got punished for that. So I just felt that they just didn't have the right resources at their disposal. And that's why I was in favor of Lee Kasparek's addition, because it's, again, we have discussed this quite a lot of times in terms of what pace are working for the spinners over here at Sharjah. The average pace of Eden Carson was 82, Fran Jonas was 83, and what's working over here is less than 75. So, of course, Amelia Kerr being a wrist spinner in women's cricket, they generally bowl it slowly, so her average pace was 75, which is right in that range that has been turning out to be really effective for the spinners. But for the other two finger spinners in particular, it was too quick and it was not really working out. So I just didn't feel as if they are the right bowlers, or they were kind of aware enough of what is really kind of working over here and varying their pace. If you're constantly clocking in and around that 80 to 85 range, then it's not really going to work out. Batters are waiting to capitalize upon that. That's exactly what the Australian batters did. But coming to Alyssa Healy, even when I saw her, play that shot, I was like, why are you doing that? Because you don't play that shot ever. And doing it against a left-arm spinner who generally, gets the ball to drift into you. She's basically a left-arm in-swing bowler. I know technically she's a left-arm in-swing bowler. So you can't be, playing that sort of shot when you're not used to playing that sort of shot. So she got away with that. But after that, she made a great adjustment, and the shots that you talked about, that inside out, over mid off, over the covers, and she made a fantastic use of it in terms of playing those aerial shots and making it count in the power play.
For sure, and again, in terms of New Zealand's changes as well, Neha, yesterday we spoke about how, of course, one was Jessica missing out for a spinner, whether it's Lee Kasparek or Fran Jonas or something, they can take a call on. And then we also spoken about how they potentially don't need too many pace options. They can, try and see if they can bring in both the spinners in Fran Jonas and Lee Kasparek and let, rest two other pacers. Clearly, they didn't look at it that way. But their next match is again going to be in Sharjah against Sri Lanka, which is a side that, you would imagine is a lot more competent against spin. But given the surface, do you see them making any changes? Because Brooke Halliday has raised the hand up. I mean, call it whatever you want here. Get 2 wickets. I know they were off absolutely horrendous deliveries. But yeah, all in all, तुम्हें लगता है कि अभी भी एक chance है, not Roseberry में, I don't know who can be rested, but whoever.
No, I think they'll still opt for the same combination as this match itself, because I think you need to give your players some confidence. No, matlab, ऐसे एक match में you just wouldn't want to drop them. And just looking at the conditions, I think Fran Jonas would get that sort of an extra cushion to just go out there and express herself. I mean, Jessica did show some potential, but again, we could see her kind of struggle in these conditions. So I think New Zealand would probably still opt for that same unchanged 11. Yeah.
Thoughts on that, Jeet? Again, do you see any changes potentially happening ahead of the next game, given that it's happening on the same surface in Sharjah?
I think there will be. Now they'll probably realize what's kind of working out over here and why it was a mistake to leave out Lee Kasparek. Look, I'm all in for having different variations or more variations in your side, but sometimes the conditions define the kind of playing 11 you need to pick, and sometimes those conditions do not demand variations or kind of variety in your spin attack. You just need to go with the trend and what has really worked over, at that particular venue for you or for the other teams. You've got to bank upon that rather than just blindly adding more variety into your side. So I think they would probably or hopefully realize that, and that's where I'm hoping that that addition of Lee Kasparek is made. And secondly, anyway, Sri Lankan attack has got Chamari Ettapattu, and then they've got Harshita Madhvi, and they've got also Hastini Pereira in the top 4. So they've got plenty of left-handers as well. And with Lee Kasparek also having good record against them, I'm just hoping that New Zealand would have kind of realized that and would rectify that error and make that change. I would personally leave out Leah Tahu again. Rosemary Mayer in both the games has performed phenomenally well. So she has kind of cemented her position in the playing 11. If in the first game it was more about those in-swing deliveries or out-swing deliveries and variations, this game was a lot more about her variations and those slower deliveries coming into play and fetching a wicket. So she has shown that great versatility and great adjustment to two different venues. So I don't think that it's probably right to leave her out based on the form factor. Whereas Leah Tahu is anyway chipping in with say 2 overs or 3 overs. So that's probably now that area has become, or that spot has become a spot which can be changed now for the next game.
But do you think New Zealand is someone who would be comfortable, resting Leah Tahu? Like, how do you see the dynamic there? Because she is your most, but she is your most experienced pacer, bowler, if you want to put it that way. So, do you see this actually happening, or you're just saying this is ideally what should happen?
No, there is a good chance for this to happen because then I think that might demand more overs out of Brooke Halliday if required, or even Sophie Devine could be utilized as a bowler if she wants to bring herself on for a couple of overs. Then that option is always there for them as an extra pace option. So it will make complete sense. And like I mentioned, Leah though at the end of the day, if she's tipping in the 2 overs or 3 overs, then there is no point of having her on the side. You'd rather invest in a different kind of off spinner on your side, and that might actually turn out to be a lot more effective. And that other spinner, of course, being Reek as well, she can bat as well. So it's not that you're adding somebody you cannot add any value with the bat. So she's also somebody you can bat. So I don't see, much power or more rating kind of being affected as far as the batting is concerned by adding Lee Kasparik or Leah Tahu. So I think it might realistically happen as well. I won't be surprised.
All right, and to be honest, I actually expected Sophie Devine to roll her arm over because the way she bowls, the pace at which she bowls, importantly, again, mid to late 90s, sometimes, of course, she does cross over 100, but that pace worked here. We saw with Brooke Halliday as well, she was bowling early 90s. Dibbly Dobbly did not really have anything going on. I don't think she was. I guess the only plan she had in mind was कि भाई land कराना है मेरे को बस surface पे वो भी 2-3 बार नहीं हुआ but ठीक है no one's complaining like we said earlier 2 wickets तो मिल गए but just one last question Akash here asks do you think New Zealand can use Maddie Green as an extra spinner and use that spot for another pacer instead? She's got good numbers in smash but is she really good enough for the World Cup?
No, she doesn't bowl a lot. I know when she used to bowl, she was a very, very handy right-arm off spinner. But again, she's a spinner that bowls it very quicker through the air and drifts the ball away from the right-hander. So again, that falls right under the category of Eden Carson. So it's not really going to be a lot of variety you add by having, Maddie Green. Here, again, what you need are slower spinners. And again, that is where Lee Kasparik kind of checks that box. So I don't think Maddie Green can be looked upon as an option. I know she used to bowl, but she hasn't been doing that so regularly off late. So I would potentially not really go to her or look at her as that extra spin option in the side. In fact, just coming to that, there is Susie Bates, who's a much more better option. Susie Bates has been regularly bowling, and yesterday also I actually expect her to roll her arm over, and she's turning out to be really useful as well because she's actually getting some of the balls to rip past the outside edge of the left-handed batters as well from some of the footage that I've checked. So she could have been a much more handier option if they wanted to opt for that. But I don't know why she is not being looked upon at that. But anyway, it does not matter. You need to have frontline spinners here.
I don't think Katie Martin was this optimistic when she spoke about, Susie Bates rolling her arm over. She was like, yeah, she's there. She's an option. She's neither here nor there. ऐसा कुछ तो मतलब hesitantly बोल रही थी in the pre-match, toss report or something like that. But yeah,
No,
fair
it was,
enough.
It was pre-match when she mentioned that, but even she knows that Susie Bates is somebody who regularly rolls her arm over, including all the domestic seasons. She's a regular off spinner and she bowls pretty much in every game. So she's somebody who's still used to bowling more than Maddie Green. So it was actually an option. She has bowled in the warm-ups as well. So an option that's definitely there.
All right, so let's see. Of course, New Zealand do play their next game on Saturday, the 12th of October, and that's against Sri Lanka in Sharjah. So won't be easy. Sri Lanka is a side that's, we wouldn't say high flying, but in recent past on spinning tracks, especially, they've done reasonably well, even against Pakistan in Sharjah. They weren't too bad, and they weren't too bad against Australia either. They did run them close, despite having to defend a paltry total of about 94, 95, if I'm not wrong. Still managed to hold on to the Aussie batters till the 16th over. So clearly they've got potential, especially on a track that would assist their spinners. So it will be a very fascinating game that on Saturday. But that's that from the preview. I mean, from the review of the only game rather that we saw today. Just one last bit of formality in terms of who the top performer is, and that of course has to be Amelia Kerr, aka Millie Kerr. I don't know what exactly does she go by, but jo bhi hai, the solid all-round performance from her. 4 for 26 was a pick of the bowlers for the Kiwis. 29 of 31 with the bat was a pick of the batters for the Kiwis. Neha again, like good performance, but unfortunately she's again a part of a side that solely depends on her.
Yeah, definitely. I think her performance was, stellar today. Got those 4 important wickets, and I think the over, where she got Elise Perry and Grace Harris out was such a match defining. It could have been a match defining moment, but unfortunately, she finds herself on the losing cause. But again, just looking at the composition of the White Ferns as well, they heavily depend on her, and even looking at like the future, the horizon, we would see, possible retirements with, say, the likes of Sophie Devine or Susie Bates retiring. So the entire pressure, just kind of falls on Amelia Kerr. I mean, she can individually perform, but you kind of need the team to collectively stand up and also deliver. But in spite of that, I think today's performance, she will, have a lot of positives to take away. And I think at some point she would hope, the rest of the team can also kind of support and compliment her. And even looking at the batting effort, although it was a knock that did come in the losing cause, I think that partnership, with the partnership with Sophie Devine up there. Yeah, was it Sophie Devine? You know,
Susie
with
Bates.
Susie Bates. With Susie Bates up front did give at least a glimmer of hope, although it was like a runnable 47 run knock, a 47 run partnership. But again, yeah, it was one of those occasions where they just couldn't come together as a unit, and it pretty much costed them the game.
Yeah, and geez, if I remember correctly, you'd spoken about how her bowling has been in really good rhythm. She's been looking in really good rhythm. Importantly, her googlies were coming out great in the warm-up games, especially. We saw the googlies account for Release Perry and Grace Harris there. All in all, she's looking very good for New Zealand. But उसके अलावा कोई है ही नहीं यार support करने के लिए.
वो तो इशू होने ही वाला है और वो इशू काफी टाइम से है for them, and it's a very very young spin attack as well. If you look at the age for all the three spinners, they are all very young. I'm of course not adding Lee Kasparek to this, but the spinners that are featured in the two games so far, I mean, they are very young, so quite inexperienced from that perspective, leaving of course Amelia Kerr out because she's very experienced at the age of 23 as well. But yeah, it's that googlies that had dropped significantly for a long time. If from my observation, that googly and the kind of confidence that she used to have had withered away over a period of time, at least over the last couple of years, in no matter what competition that she played, other than, of course, a Super Smash. The googlies had reduced significantly and she had started bowling a lot of leg breaks. So that percentage was very, very imbalanced. But, of course, during that T20 series against Australia, I started observing those googlies come out a lot more regularly, a lot more frequently, and they were very, very accurate, and they were also turning out to be those wicket-taking deliveries for her. So, of course, having seen that series, I was kind of hoping that she continues, bowling those googlies, or maybe she's regained that confidence. And then that, of course, continued during the warm-up games as well, where those googlies were coming out and they were taking plenty of wickets, getting plenty of wickets for her. So it was very, very clear. And then, of course, the main tournament, we saw that against India as well, those googlies turning out to be wicket-taking deliveries. And she's continued that over here as well. So it's good to see her having regained that confidence of, executing those googlies, pinpoint, and, getting wickets off them. I'm just thinking whether Grace Harris also with the first ball ducks, whether Laura Harris or Grace Harris first ball duck to hona hi hota hai. But all in all, a very good, very good spell from her. It's just that, of course, the damage was done by then. Australia had got 20 runs on the board, so she came back for a spell in the latter half of the innings, potentially at the death. In the last 5 overs is when she operated, and that is where she is quick to take those wickets and ensure that Australia don't run away from them and end up scoring in excess of 160. So Millie Kerr was literally the reason why they were restricted to that 148. But on the batting forefront, it was on the expected lines. With Millie Kerr, you don't really expect quick knocks. She is an anchor and she's going to play at that kind of rate. I know it is a lot more slower, but वो generally वही range होता है. So it's not really surprising as far as that is concerned. But overall, she'll be happy with the performance in all three aspects. Even one of the catch that she took was brilliant. There was another catch that she took that was not given as a catch. Yeah, sadly that was not given. But overall, a very good game for her in all the three departments.
Yeah, and again in terms of the googlies as well, what I found interesting was she does not release her googlies in the conventional form with the palm, being visible to the batter, because that's usually a very, a very key visual cue that batters use to identify ki googly hai ki straight one hai. She has a different way of delivering her googlies, similar to what Hasranga does. Because the palm isn't entirely visible, it takes batters that much more time to just identify ki was he googly. And of course, we saw the result in terms of how effective her googlies were. And like Jeet also mentioned, there's a reason why historically as well, when she's able to bowl more googlies, naturally that's been her wicket-taking deliveries as well. So good on her. Let's hope we get to see a lot more of them. Hopefully not against Sri Lanka. एक आध मैच हार लो है क्योंकि हम यहाँ बैठे हैं आस लगाए हुए कि यार इंडिया जीतेगी, इंडिया पहुंचेगी आगे. But yeah, jokes apart, of course, solid performance from her. Let's just take a few audience comments before we move on to previewing tomorrow's games. Meghna Saxena, that seems like a new name. Please make sure you hit the like button if you haven't already. And again, please, guys, all of you watching, please make sure you hit the like button if you haven't already. And again, Also subscribe to us if you haven't already. हम हैं यहाँ पे 15 दिन बचा है टूर्नामेंट के लिए, 15 भी नहीं 12 दिन बचा है, पूरे 12 के 12 दिन हम रहेंगे यहाँ पे कवर करने के लिए. Now Meghna asks, can Sri Lanka thrash New Zealand? क्या लगता है नेहा, can they thrash New Zealand?
Yeah, maybe thrash is like a slight overstatement there, because Sri Lanka too, right? We have to read the context. They're coming from 2 matches, having lost 2 matches. But again, I think just looking at the kind of spin attack they have, they can definitely challenge the likes of New Zealand. I mean, if they struggle the way they did today, it wouldn't be very surprising if Sri Lanka also gets the better of them. I think as an Indian fan, we would, ideally want a scenario like that. If Sri Lanka can actually thrash New Zealand and get a massive win, see how this group mixes up, because Group A is getting very interesting now. We just saw the points table. This loss has kind of dented not just New Zealand's confidence, probably even that net run rate. So a lot of teams looking in the fray to kind of make it to that second spot and eventually qualify for the semi-finals. So yeah, let's see how things pan out.
I imagine लोग इंडिया न्यूजीलैंड के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं और पाकिस्तान आउट ऑफ सिलेबस रास्ते से आके पहुंच जाएगी सेमीफाइनल्स. You never know. That's also, I mean, well and truly in the reckoning, because they play New Zealand, and I don't mind backing Pakistan over New Zealand as well, because Pakistan's bowling is doing a lot better, is in great form. Their batting might not be the greatest of form, but I would still back their batters over New Zealand's batting lineup. So let's see क्या होता है वहाँ पे. It will be an interesting game. That game is happening in Dubai though, so New Zealand will also be on a much more level playing field. That way it won't be a proper dust bowl of a surface. So वहाँ पे last question, of course, I'll throw this to Jeet. Why did New Zealand struggle after the 47-run partnership? To be honest, they struggled even during the partnership. Why did their batters struggle? अगर बोलना है तो.
That is because their best batters in the side, the 3 of the best batters in the side are in the top 4. So once they are gone, there will be absolutely nothing really that's to follow, because all of them have been struggling. Whether you talk about Brooke Halliday, Maddie Green has kind of not lived up to the reputation or the billing that you'd probably expect from her in the T20 format of the game. Izzy Yates is inexperienced, and that's pretty much it. They have the batting depth, but they can chip in with runs, but you can't be relying upon them to score a lot of runs. So it's a very, very raw middle order or lower middle order that they've got. So it's always going to be a big struggle if none or only 1 out of 3 in Susie Bates, Millie Kerr or Sophie Devine performs or is gone. So it's always going to be challenging. It's a very brittle middle order, if I have to put it.
Yeah, for sure. And we've been speaking about it since the team previews as well, that New Zealand's batting hasn't been in the greatest of form, especially if you look at the numbers against spin. They don't stack up well. And if you put them on the surface like Sharjah, this was inevitable, to put it very simply. In fact, मुझे याद है, like कल के stream के बाद off air जब हम discuss किए थे, we had pretty much this in our minds के ऐसा ही कुछ result होएगा where they'll be thrashed. It was all about New Zealand first batting करके 70 पे all out होके 10 ओवर में concede कर देगी कि कुछ total बनवा के फिर chase करते time 80-90 पे all out हो जाएगी या क्या हो जाएगा. That was pretty much it. But all in all, that's that from what we saw today between Australia and New Zealand. The trans-Tasmanian rivalry not really living up to its hype. Let's hope that tomorrow's game live up to their hype at least. Let's look ahead to what's coming tomorrow. Tomorrow we're back to having a double header. It is going to be a wonderful Wednesday that way. Scotland taking on South Africa. That's coming live from Dubai, 3:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. And then is the second game. It's the all-important game between India and Sri Lanka. A repeat of the Asia Cup final that we saw a few months ago. I wish we could start directly on the second match, but nahi hoga. Scotland, South Africa. First things first. Jeet, let's start with you again. Scotland, the way they played against West Indies, we spoke about how the scorecard isn't necessarily a reflection of their performance. They haven't been doing too badly themselves. South Africa, on the other hand, will be coming off a slightly disappointing victory, so to say, against England in Sharjah. Kya expect kar rahe ho wahan pe?
You can't rule out Scotland completely. I know South Africa, of course, start as favourites. There is no doubting that. But day game, there will be less impact in terms of how the ball behaves, the amount of turn that you get. We have seen a bit of movement as well, but that movement is a lot more exaggerated in the evening games. In the morning games or the afternoon games, it's a little less. It's quite less as compared to the evening games. So I think that is where Scotland would kind of fancy their chances, because this is their best chance to put in a decent performance, or at least being with a shout of pushing South Africa or even toppling them over. So it won't be as straightforward. I don't really expect that. I do think Scotland will bat a lot better than they have in the previous 2 games. It's just about the kind of resources that they offer in this particular game. I do expect a few changes. there is a good chance Darcy Carter will probably sit out of this game, and Megan McCall might be picked up. On the on the on the bowling forefront, I'm not too sure what's going to happen. I think they might continue to back their spin attack and go spin heavy. So I think Chloe Abel will probably sit out of the 11. But yeah, that's the only change I expect. Of course, the only tweak that I need is that batting order. I need a shuffle there. If it has to work, there has to be a shuffle. Your three best batters cannot be in your top three. It's as simple as that.
So you want Sarah Bryce to move down the order, like you've been saying, कि number 4 पे खेलना चाहिए.
I want Sarah Bryce at number 4 and Alyssa Lister to open. If Megan McCall comes in, then even she's a good opening option as well. So basically, Sarah Bryce needs to go down at number 4 is what I really want, so that it just breaks apart that top 3.
No, that's a fair shot. Again, you would not want to lose all your important batters in the power play itself. Something that happened in the last game against West Indies. But यार मेरे को तो Darcy Carter को और देखना है, because I think there's a lot to work with. I want to see more of her. यहाँ पे तो जीत भाई रेस्ट करके बैठे हैं. But Neha, let's start with you on that. Scotland's batting hasn't lived up to its. Okay, I can't even say hasn't lived up to its billing. They haven't, performed as well as they would have wanted to. We've spoken about how it's. In general, we've always seen this. Batters tend to take a bit more time to make the jump to a higher stage, to a higher level of bowling, higher standard of bowling. Importantly, same is the case with Scotland. But do you think the Scottish batting lineup can do something against South Africa, because the bowlers themselves haven't really been in the greatest of form?
Yeah, I mean, now it's also important to take into account that this is Scotland's, maiden T20 World Cup, and they don't play as often against top flight teams. But in either case, they will, I think, look to have a good outing versus South Africa. I mean, when you look at South Africa's bowling as well, it's again very heavily dependent on Marizanne Kaap and like the power play. Then you have non-Kululeko. Laba coming in later with her spin and everything. So I think in that, I got the pronunciation right. So I think in that sense,
no, you got it right. I was just thinking of a challenge in my head. Bata.
Yeah. So in that sense, I think Scotland would still, kind of fancy their chances. And I agree with Jeet here that if they can probably just break up that sort of their batting, you have Saskia Horley, you have Sarah Bryce and Catherine Bryce, coming back to back. Probably if they can just have that. Their entry points change a little bit. I think things can be a little different. It also depends on the toss, right? If Scotland is batting first, they will look to, probably put up a competitive total and, eventually hope that their bowlers come to the party and deliver. So either case, I'd still say advantage South Africa and even Scotland, right? They would want to at least just get one win. Probably South Africa could be, one of those, I wouldn't call it an upset, but like, one of those memorable wins that they would want to, kind of have in this World Cup. So let's see how the match kind of pans out.
Look, even I'm a fan of Darcy Carter to begin with, but it's true that she's been struggling at this level. She was tried out as an opener, and she was not really giving those quick starts that she's known to give in the regional cricket that takes place in England. Then she was shifted down to the middle order role over there. Also, she's been struggling to find those boundaries. And then last time around, we saw a couple of runouts as well, where she was out and out at fault. If you remember that runout of Lorna Jack Brown and even Catherine Fraser, if you remember, when she kind of hit a shot and she just turned around. There was no communication whatsoever to Catherine Fraser, who just kept running. So I think those kind of things will go against her at this level. And when you have got experienced options in even Abby Atkin-Drummond, of course, Megan McCall is another name I took. They are a lot more experienced. So I think Scotland probably will start looking at bringing or adding a lot more experience to the side. And that is why I think Darcy Carter might sit out. But even in terms of the batting order, I'll be more than happy to see even Lorna Jack Brown being promoted. She is batted number 4, I believe. And she's a very good batter as well. So that top 6 has to have Saskia Horley, Megan McCall, Catherine Bryce, Ailsa Lister, and Lorna Jack Brown. You've got to have all these batters in the top 6. And then you can, if you want to pick Darcy Carter, then all these batters have to follow them. It's basically backing your experience in the top 6 to get the job done.
Also, just one thing, if I remember correctly, Ailsa Lister did fall badly in the last game. We're not sure, because the way she was holding her hand, it did seem like it was a bit serious. If you remember, there was that diving attempt. She was holding her hand fairly stiffly. I'm not sure. She did walk off the field then. Kal ke match ke liye kya hoga? So if in case agar ऐसा कुछ होता है that precautionary measures या ऐसा कुछ लेंगे, so you could potentially see her also missing the game, unfortunately. But no update on it. कुछ officially हमें पता नहीं. We just are talking about what we saw on the field that day. So that'll also be something we'll keep an eye out for. Scotland के बारे में तो अभी काफी बात किया, but South Africa themselves, they did play a game here in Dubai that was against West Indies. We saw Ayabonga Kaka, Maizan Ka with the new ball, especially the way they were moving the ball. Given that was also an afternoon game and they were bowling for aisa bhi nahi, it was helpful conditions. So it's not going to be easy for Scotland there. Neha, let's start with you. Do you think it's going to be this pace that will hold key for South Africa given their spinners' lack of form?
Absolutely. I think for far too long, South Africa has depended on Marizanne Kaap and Ayabonga Khaka to give them, those fiery starts with the ball, get those wickets up front. If not, try to stem the run flow. And I think these two will be key to South Africa's prospects, because we have spoken time and again about how, the spin attack is almost non-existent, entirely, dependent on one player. So in that sense, they would need this duo to step up. And we've seen them time and again, come to the party and actually deliver for South Africa. So I think, yeah, if this duo can provide that sort of a strong start, I think they will be crucial to South Africa's prospects.
Jeet, how are you looking at this? Any potential changes for them, given that now they're back to playing in Dubai as opposed to Sharjah from the last game?
I think they know that this is the best game for them to try out a couple of new players. That's the only reasoning I see as to why they might make a couple of changes. Of course, beginning with Mikey Ritter probably replacing Sinalo Jafta. With Jafta, again, we saw a few fumbles as a wicketkeeper, a few buys being conceded. So just to test it out, they might try it out. And of course, Seshni Naidu being another option, because they know spin has played a huge part in this tournament across both the venues. So they would probably want to see how she goes about it. And here's her best chance to play against a team who has not been the best when playing spin. So that's the only place where I see them making a couple of changes. Otherwise, they don't need to make these changes. But purely from the perspective of what's to come in the future and what's been the trend, you'll probably want to give these two players a bit of game time.
So Seshni Naidu who will she replace? Like Anika Bosch, Niri Dug?
Yeah, it has. No, so either Aneka Bosch goes out or Nonkululeko Malaba might be rested, because again she was coming out of an injury concern. So just to give her a bit of rest, she might sit out.
Fair enough. All right. So let's see what happens there in terms of Scotland versus South Africa. Of course, that is the noon game. I'm also excited for the game. I just hope Scotland put up a better showing with the bat. Saskia Hawley, जिनके बारे में हमने बात भी किया है काफी. Let's hope she also has a decent outing. She started off well in the last game against West Indies before getting out early on. So let's hope इस बार थोड़े और boundaries देखने को मिलेंगे. But won't be easy, of course, given that it'll be Ayabonga Khaka and Marizanne Kaap, bowling to them with the new ball. But fingers crossed, they will do well. Apart from that, there is another game. It is a double-header tomorrow. And that is, of course, like I said earlier, a repeat of this year's Asia Cup final. It's India taking on Sri Lanka. We saw what happened in Dambula. Neha, do you think we'll be seeing a repeat of that once again?
Hopefully not. I think, India's perhaps learned their lessons. And after, the kind of start we've had in this World Cup, that loss versus New Zealand, I don't know, let's just call it a win versus Pakistan. There is probably a little, I'd say an ounce of confidence, heading into this match. But then India will look for redemption, because we've lost against Sri Lanka in that Asia Cup final. And I'm hoping they've learned their lessons and everything. And as much as our players try to dismiss this whole net run rate discourse, it is very important to take into account. And I think getting that win versus Sri Lanka, who have lost both of their matches, will be of utmost importance. We need all of our players to, step up collectively as a unit to, deliver. And I hope they keep that net run rate as the main focal point, because I think the fans are obsessing over it so much. It's time even the players, do that, just to understand, the pathway to the semi-finals as well. So I'd say still, India has that advantage coming into this match. I hope, all the news we've read about, Harmanpreet Kaur being fit is true, and we will, kind of see her feature. But interested to see what is the playing 11 that India would opt for. Would we still keep Sajna in, or I mean, she didn't do any wrong, so I think she still seems like
she didn't do anything. Right?
She hit the boundary.
Did
Yeah,
she?
strike
She
rate of
didn't
400.
get to do anything. She didn't get to do anything. Just the one ball, that's it.
Yeah, just the one
मैं
ball.
तो भूल गया, अरे हाँ, भूल भी गया मैं, अरे वो याद भी कोई कौन रखता है. But again,
Yeah.
Just to add that word, he didn't get. Yeah.
But in terms of Harmanpreet's fitness, of course, Priti Mandana did confirm in the pre-match presser that she is fit and running, and she will be available for tomorrow's game. So, sports fan, I know this was a hypothetical question. Given that she's not recovering, let's not sort of rota heads over कौन खेलेगा उसके बदले, वो खेल रही है, तो बाकी का बाद में देखेंगे जब वो एक्चुअली फिट ना होंगी या ऐसा कुछ होगा तो हम बात करेंगे. But Jeet, again, India is coming off a win, a fairly scratchy one at that, but sure, a win is a win. They would also want to have that net run rate in their minds, but again, given what Smriti had to say in the pre-match presser today, she was like, हाँ net run rate है, but हम ज़्यादा देख नहीं सकते क्योंकि अभी जीतना भी है, हम उस पे focus कर रहे हैं, and it's supposedly the early stages of the tournament, which did not make a lot of sense to be honest, but ठीक है जो भी है. So given all of these subplots, how do you think this match is shaping up?
The thing is, abhi nahi kiya to fir gaye. It's only 2 games remaining. If you don't have the net run rate at the back of your mind, you'll be done. Because it's true. I mean, Pakistan, New Zealand, and India, all 3 are tied up or locked up at 2 points. And whilst India lost by 60 runs, New Zealand lost by 58 runs tonight. Yet the NRR is as follows: Pakistan have positive 0.55, New Zealand has negative 0.05. And India are negative minus 1.22. So it's that big a gap already. So if you don't play the game, keeping the NRR in your mind, then you are done. Because that is what it's going to come down to. That is what it's going to boil down to. Because of the mistakes that you have made in the first 2 games. Of course, first game just losing it in a horrible manner. And second game, winning it, but not so convincingly in terms of the margin that they could have easily reduced. Since they haven't done that, these 2 games become imperative in terms of winning it by huge margins, so that you don't have to rely upon an equation in the last game. Last game में फिर ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि भाई 80 runs के margin से जीतना पड़ेगा, then only you will make it to the top 2. It should not come down to that. And it's Australia, so you need to be cognizant of that particular fact. Otherwise, guys, this game right here is your best chance to ensure that NRR does not have a huge say in the last game. So that's why it's going to be really important. वो NRR, look, it doesn't matter how the players, even they would be aware. Publicly आके बोलना पड़ता है कि ये नहीं है, wins are important and all that stuff, but at the end of the day they know how to calculate and they have it at the back of their mind as well. So I still feel India missed a trick against Pakistan, but this is the game where they have to make up for it. So probably the better way to go about this would be to bowl first, restrict Sri Lanka to whatever they can, and then chase it down as quickly as you can. And for that you need aggressive batters in the top 4, top 5, top 6. जो भी aggressive है, धक्का मार के वो लोग को भेजो तो pitch पे, जाओ खेलो aggressively and get the job done as quickly as possible. Cap off the chase, ensure that the NRR comes into a good positive equation, and then just take it from there on. Otherwise, bhai ye gaya khatam hai for tournament.
Yeah, at the very least, I'm hoping that at least Smriti Mandhana and Shefali Verma show some initiative, because अगर वो दोनों जल्दी out हो जाते, then you have enough batters in the dugout who can arrest the collapse if needed. तो कम से कम उन दोनों को power play में at least at 7 runs per over, 7.5, 8 runs per over even, उस रेट से तो मतलब मारना चाहिए कायदे से. अभी देखते हैं कल क्या होता है वहां पे. In terms of Sri Lankan bowlers as well, it's not going to be easy. We will be talking about them as well in due course. Nikhil bhai here asking us, Neha, about Jenny's batting position. We spoke about how there is clearly proper, what's the game called? Musical chairs. Thank God, I thought I forgot the game. There's clearly a game of musical chairs going around the number 3 spot. We saw Herman in the first game, then it was Jemmy. Do you see Jemmy holding on to that spot tomorrow? Or do you see Herman coming back there?
Yeah, with the Indian team, this is one question you certainly can't answer, because every single match they will throw up some new permutation and combination. But if you personally ask me, yes, I would back Jemmy at number 3. If we've given her one game, we should give her another go at number 3. This is a spot where we've seen her kind of score the bulk of runs. Harmanpreet Kaur doesn't seem to be in that sort of a rhythm to get you those runs at number 3, because even just looking at our openers who can be sort of volatile, Smriti Mandhana is not able to just get you those sort of starts. Shefali also seems all over the place. So I think having someone like Jemmy at number 3 would at least to me it makes complete sense. And just giving her another go in a match versus Sri Lanka like this, I think would be fair shout. I would love to see her come in at number 3. But I think even Nikhil goes on to ask this question, like Chase, do we bring in say a Richa at number 3? I don't know. Maybe that can be considered. Again, you'll have to see the match situation. If you're chasing a massive total, we need someone like her to, kind of just maximize the power play. If we have lost that early wicket, then definitely, Richa can be considered. But at least for now, to answer this question, I'd say yes. I think we should still back Jenny at number 3.
Hi, मेरे हिसाब से तो सजना है floater. Put her. I mean, just number 3 पे भेज दो उसको. Number 4 Herman, number 5 Jemmy, number 6 Richa. Everyone then slots into their position, at least a position that they've played for India in the last 12 to 18 months. It'll be easier. And Sajna, you, like we said earlier, just give her the license ki boss जाओ मारो, मारी तो मारी, नहीं मारी तो ठीक है. वैसे भी एक ही बॉल मिलने वाला था एंड में, वो एक बॉल स्टार्टिंग में खेल के देख लो क्या होता है. जीत, where do you stand on the number 3 debate?
I think जिसका नाम चिट में से निकलेगा उसका मिल जाएगा number 3 पे chance, because that's how it's been so far. But I think, look, it's more about the opponent as well over here at Sri Lanka. So, at the most, they are going to only have 4 overs of pace. Unless if they offer somebody like Ama Kanchana or Achini Kulasurya, then only you would have more pacers on the side. So, it's a spin-heavy attack. So, it needs to be your best batters of spin in your top 5. And when I say best, it of course also factors in the strike rate. Like, they need to have the ability to find boundaries. So, Chemima, of course, is somebody who's very good against spin. And so is Harmanpreet. But wo wahi again start pe aa jata hai, that slow start. How quickly can they find those boundaries? So that's the only thing. But if I have to ignore all these things, and again, I would say that pinch hitter role for Sachna has been a thing that I've talked about. Ki agar wo hai team mein, to you're better off using her as a pinch hitter. Get her in at number 3, number 4, depending upon when the first wicket falls down, second wicket goes down, and just try to make the most out of it. Get the best out of her from that perspective and try to find those boundaries or runs quickly. So it really depends upon when that first wicket goes down. If it goes down early in the power play, then I'll promote Sajna. If it goes after the power play, then I think Chemi or Harman, I'm okay with either of them. But a power play has to be maximized. You have to capitalize upon that.
All right, so it's time for us to now talk about Sri Lanka as well. They did play their first 2 games in Sharjah, one against Pakistan and then Australia. So this is their first time in Dubai. Jeet, let's start with you. You spoke about how right now, currently as things stand, they have only 4 overs of pace in Udeshika Prabodhini. Do you see them making that change? Probably Inuka Ranavira, given that she did not have the greatest of games last time around, her missing out and bringing in Achani Kulasurya, basically just a swap of what they did last game.
They'll probably back experience. So I don't see Inoka Ranavira going out. It might be Inoshi Priyadarshini who might actually sit out for this game, because they've got quite a few off-spin options. They have Kavisha Dilari, they've got Chamari Attapattu as well. So that's an area where they are well covered. In terms of left-arm spin as well, they've got Sugandhika Kumari, but they left out Sachini, right, in the previous game. So they had basically gone in with 2 left-arm spinners. So they'll continue to back those 2 left-arm spinners. And so if somebody has to go out, in my view, it has to be Inoshi Priyadarshini. She has been struggling to get those wickets lately. And again, from the perspective of the kind of batting order India has got, they would rather back the experience of the left-arm spin and Inoka Ranavira over the off-spin of Inoshi. So that's how I'm kind of visualizing it.
Interesting. And Neha, what about you? Given the kind of options they have at their disposal, and also given the fact that this will be their first time in Dubai, a lot more conducive to their pacers, do you see them potentially bringing in another pacer in Achani Kulasurya, who played the first game?
Yeah, I think it is a fair shout. That is an option they can definitely consider, because Udeshika Prabodhini has been bowling well from the other end. So having a pacer, kind of complement her from the other end would, kind of augur well for them. So I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of, enforce this change to challenge India. But again, just historically looking at India and Sri Lanka battles, we've seen how the Indian batters have clearly struggled against spin, right? There is a chokehold and you see the runs, just coming in at such a difficult rate. So yeah, I mean, it would be a good shout to probably bring in that extra pacer, but I think the spin attack is good enough to, kind of challenge the Indian batters. So yeah, let's see how that pans out.
Yeah, and I stand corrected. I thought I'd seen Kulusurya. No, Prabodhini was the only pacer across both the games. Sachini Nisansala was part of the first game, and then Inoka Ranavira came in. I do think, there is merit in bringing in another pacer, given how Dubai has played, especially with the new ball, but I'm not sure if there is enough new ball value available with the kind of options they have. So वहाँ पे अगर spinners के साथ ही खिलाना है, that's also a fair shout. Let's see how they go about it. But given that they have another spinner that Nikhil Bhai spoke about even last time when we were previewing the Australia game, do you see them playing Himani? If I'm not wrong, she's a wrist spinner there. Do you think, wrist spinner or ambidextrous, वैसा वाला है ना? She can do both, or मतलब left arm off and left arm wrist, like from what I remember.
She's a left arm wrist spinner, 15 years old.
Only that. So do you think that's something they could look at?
I don't think that's quite likely over here, because again, having a 15-year-old being asked to play against India at such a big stage is a big challenge. And why Sashi Naidu ka just it's a similar scenario for Sashini as well. And she's even more inexperienced and a lot more younger. So I think I don't see her featuring in any of the games unless like Sri Lanka know that they have been knocked out of the competition, which could happen tomorrow. If they lose, they'll be out for sure. So only then they might probably look to have Sashini play the last game. Otherwise, tomorrow I don't see that taking place. There might be an addition of a pacer. That's what I think. It has to be a Chini Kulasurya who might actually get a chance ahead of, in my opinion, Inoshi. But besides that, I don't see Gimani getting a chance tomorrow.
Alright, देखते हैं क्या होता है वहाँ पे. We'll of course take the comments as well, but श्रीलंका के bowling के बारे में तो बात कर लिया. I know they are spin heavy, they've got plenty of options. We've spoken about them as well. But what about Sri Lanka's batting? Because that has been a cause for concern. Just 85 in the first game, 94 in the second game. We spoke about how they played 40 overs across both games, but they haven't been able to score enough. They haven't been able to play attacking cricket enough. If I'm not wrong, the stat that we spoke about, they've scored only 7 boundaries across the 2 innings. That is for Sri Lanka itself. 7 boundaries, despite playing each of, the full quota of overs in both the innings. So they've not been bundled out. Jeet, let's start with you on that. Clearly, the batting is something they would want to work on, especially you've spoken about Vishmi and her slow starts.
Not only Vishmi, the problem is even Chamari and her slow starts are an issue. So it's a problem that's common across both the openers and even the other batters to come. Nobody is somebody who gets you off the blocks very, very quickly. So that's where all these problems are lying, because they are taking their time very early on and then they are getting out. So it's putting a lot more pressure on the new batters who are walking in, because they again have to rebuild. And rebuilding again means taking a few balls to kind of get your eye and consolidate and all that stuff. So in a scenario like that with boundaries, आएंगे ही कहाँ से? कोई बचता ही नहीं है फिर. They lose wickets, they consolidate for like 60 or 70% of their innings. So how are those boundaries going to come? In both these games that have taken place, it's, if you remember, I had mentioned the first game, none of the batters had a strike rate of 100. In the second game, only 2 batters had that, out of which one of them had faced a couple of balls. That's it. So there is nobody who's got those quick starts or ability to provide those quick starts. And that's why you can only hope that Chamari kind of takes the onus upon herself to provide that, because it's not that she has been a slow starter across her career. It's a recent thing. A recent thing in the sense, like last 4-5 months, she has been struggling to get off the blocks very, very quickly. She's taking her time, and then she's getting dismissed for say 25 or 30 and all that stuff. So it's not working out. So it's up to her to put her hand up and provide. Even if she goes along and say a strike rate of 120, it might do the job. But at least ensure that the strike rate is more than run a ball. That's the only place where Chamari has to step up. Otherwise, the same issues will continue in every game for Sri Lanka.
Chalo boss, there's that in terms of India, Sri Lanka, and what we can expect. Of course, हम अपने predictions भी देंगे. We'll just take a few comments. The couple of them here. Janvi goes on to add, India needs a lot more India A tours plus tours with associates that rest the key players. Aru, Radha, Shriyanka, Sahana. I was trying to think Sahana तो मेरे को सिर्फ एक ही पता है RCB के लिए जो खेली थी last season, Sahana Pawar. But I'm guessing Sajna is what she wanted to say here, etc. All bat in theory, but they've barely gotten any international batting exposure. We all, in fact, spoke about this during the India A tour that happened against Australia in August. There were hardly any names. Minu Mani, sure, you can probably say Minu Mani was the only one who's been a part of the India setup and was a part of this tour. But it made no sense when Australia themselves have the likes of Talia Migra captaining. So clearly, जब उनके side से तुम वो भेज रहे तो हम किस खेत की मूली है भाई? हम भी तो भेज सकते हैं. I mean, I'm all for seeing youngsters doing well and all of that, but yeah. If my memory serves me right, there were just 2 cap players. There was Shubha Satish, who's played Test cricket for India, and then there was Minnu Mani. So, not sure again. That was bizarre, but fingers crossed. Hopefully, things will change going forward. Right now, though, India only play a 3-match ODI series against New Zealand post the World Cup, and a 3-match ODI series against Australia in Australia when the men's team also plays the Border Gavaskar Trophy. She also goes on to say, no one seems that confident in them, and then India's top order is worrying about preserving wickets and not playing aggressively. For sure, that might be playing a role, in their top orders mind ki boss, jo niche hai, unke paas experience nahi hai, so we're not sure if they'll be able to do the job. So sab kaam hame hi karna hai, wo reh sakta hai. Fair point. Let's hope again. These are changes that happen over time. We can't expect, such changes to reflect in results quick enough. तो WPL में भी जो लोग कह रहे हैं कि WPL भी दे दिया अब तक, लेकिन कुछ हुआ नहीं यार. 2 ही साल हुआ है. IPL 2008 में शुरू हुआ था और इंडिया 2024 में जीता है. जब मेंस टीम 16 साल ले सकते तो अब रुको, आप रुक सकते हो, वेट कर सकते हैं. पेशेंस है अपने पास, क्योंकि जो फॉलो कर रहा है उनको आदत हो गई. They know that they'll have to wait. It's still a work in progress. So fingers crossed that will happen for sure. But yeah, coming back to both the games, of course, time for predictions. Jeet, let's start with you on this. South Africa, Scotland, or Scotland, South Africa, and India, Sri Lanka. What are you expecting in terms of predictions? Scotland and Sri Lanka.
Heart says Scotland and India, and mind says South Africa and India.
Okay, interesting. All right. Neha, what about you?
Yeah, so I think in the Scotland South Africa match, I'd go with South Africa. I mean, they're coming in, with some sort of a confidence. So it wouldn't be really surprising if they, just get by Scotland without, lot of difficulty. And looking at the India Sri Lanka encounter, it's a very tough one. I mean, as a drawing the hat of an analyst, would be like, yeah, I mean, Sri Lanka would, they would come in with that confidence कि हाँ हमने उनको Asia Cup में हराया था. So, we're coming in with that sort of a thing. But they've lost their first two matches and the conditions are vastly different. Even just looking at the head-to-head of India, Sri Lanka in T20s, India has the clear advantage, having won 19 times as opposed to, Sri Lanka having won just 5 times. So I'd still say India has their advantage. They just need to get that playing 11 right and make the most of whatever players they have and the capability that they have in their setup. Either case, I hope to see two well fought encounters. Where both the teams are actually putting up something for the fans to see, and just that's the hope.
But that's the thing with numbers, right? Like technically, New Zealand was also entering the World Cup with the 10-match losing streak, or India ko aage pel ke to gaye. But fair shout, of course. I do agree. I do see India winning the game tomorrow against Sri Lanka. They will be a lot more professional in their approach, hopefully, because of what's transpired in the last week or so. Between those two games, you would imagine that they will be a lot more keen on winning this game and ensuring they get those two points in their kitty. Scotland, South Africa. I want to say Scotland, but yeah, matlab, bowling mein na, like it's for me South African batters who will take care of Scottish bowlers. Like I don't see Laura Wolfart being dismissed. I know there is Catherine Bryce. If Catherine Bryce dismisses her, okay, my prediction is going to be conditional. I know it sounds bizarre. If Catherine Bryce dismisses Laura Wolfart early on in the power play, then I'll go with Scotland. I don't mind going with Scotland.
Even Rachel Slater. Same, Rachel Slater in swing.
But she's very wayward for my liking right now. She's very wayward for my liking.
Very good. No, but this tournament she's been on point. So Safani Taylor, that dismissal, if you remember, the same thing could happen with Laura Wolfart. So either a Bryce or Rachel Slater can get through the defenses of Laura Wolfart with the new ball. There is always a chance.
Okay, so condition ये है कि Laura अगर जल्दी out होती है power play के अंदर मतलब power play के अंदर out होती है, if she doesn't have a very big say on the match proceedings, then I actually see Scotland sort of getting the better of South Africa simply because their Achilles heel has been their game against spin. And यहाँ पे spin उतना मतलब they don't have too many options, but there is also Maizan का, Bayabong का, Kaka. वो भी आसान नहीं होगा. We saw how Scotland struggled against the new ball as well. So ठीक है, I'll stick to India and South Africa. हटाओ conditional offer कुछ नहीं चाहिए. I'll say India, South Africa. So does Neha, but Jeet of course has gone with heart and mind classification. So let's see what happens if Jeet's heart is correct or Jeet's mind is correct. Of course, tomorrow we will be back once again, same time, 11 p.m. sharp, discussing about both the games. I'm not going to end the sentence with another prediction there. देखते हैं क्या होता है, जो होगा देखा जाएगा. Of course. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure to hit the like button if you haven't already, guys. Come on, please do us a world of good. And yeah, it's a goodbye from all of us. Thank you.